Britain, an island shaped by invasion, migration, war, and survival. For centuries, people believed the story of the British began with the Celts, then changed completely with the Anglo-Saxons, the Vikings, and the Normans. Entire ideas of British identity were built around those invasions. But who were the first British people, really? Were modern Britons mostly descended from Celtic tribes pushed to the edges of the islands? Or did later invaders from Germany and Scandinavia replace the population almost entirely? Scientists have wrestled with this question for decades, and now ancient DNA is finally giving us answers. Some of them are genuinely surprising, because the genetic story of Britain turns out to be far older, far more layered, and far less straightforward than the old history books suggested. In this video, we're going to trace the origins of the British people. From Ice Age hunter-gatherers who crossed into a land still connected to Europe through the arrival of farmers and steppe warriors, to the astonishing DNA discoveries that revealed how much of ancient Britain still survives inside people living there today. Today, around 67 million people live in the United Kingdom, with tens of millions more worldwide carrying British ancestry. The British diaspora helped shape countries like the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. English became a global language spoken by billions, and yet the origins of the people who created Britain remained surprisingly unclear until very recently. And geography explains why. Britain looks isolated now. It's an island separated from mainland Europe by the English Channel and the North Sea. But for much of prehistory, it wasn't isolated at all. During the Ice Age, lower sea levels connected Britain directly to continental Europe through a huge landmass called Doggerland. That's not a small detail. It's the reason the earliest people entered Britain repeatedly over thousands of years. Then the seas rose. Suddenly, Britain became semi-isolated from the rest of Europe, preserving genetic layers that later migrations only partially replaced. Geography turned the islands into both a crossroads and a refuge. Here's what's interesting. Britain also shows strong regional genetic variation even today. People in Wales, Scotland, Cornwall, and parts of Ireland often preserve more ancient ancestry signals than populations in southeastern England, where later migrations arrived most heavily. And there are physical clues, too. Traits commonly associated with the British Isles, pale skin, lighter eye colors, red hair, and lactose tolerance all have deep genetic histories tied to adaptation, migration, and survival in northern climates. Scotland and Ireland, for example, contain some of the world's highest frequencies of red hair variants connected to the MC1R gene. But before we get to the DNA itself, we need to look at language. English belongs to the Germanic branch of the Indo-European language family. That points directly toward migrations from Northern Europe. But here's the thing. English arrived relatively late in Britain's story. Before English, much of Britain spoke Celtic languages related to Welsh, Cornish, Breton, Scottish Gaelic, and Irish. And before the Celts, other unknown languages likely existed entirely lost to history. And this is where it gets surprising. Welsh, Irish, and Breton remain linguistically connected even though the English Channel separates Britain from France. That's because ancient Celtic populations once stretched across huge parts of Western Europe before Roman expansion, and later Germanic migrations fragmented them. Language preserves echoes of migrations long after empires disappear. But before we get to the DNA, we need to go back much further, to the people who were here first. After the glaciers began retreating around 12,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers moved north into Britain following forests, rivers, and animal herds. One of the most famous discoveries came from Cheddar Gorge in England, where scientists analyzed the DNA of a Mesolithic man known as Cheddar Man, and the results stunned people. Cheddar Man likely had dark skin combined with blue or green eyes. That combination seems unusual today, but ancient DNA repeatedly shows that early Western European hunter-gatherers often looked very different from later Europeans. These early Britons lived by fishing, hunting deer and wild cattle, and moving seasonally through forests and coastlines. For thousands of years, they dominated the islands. Then came another wave. Around 6,000 years ago, Neolithic farmers arrived from Anatolia through mainland Europe carrying agriculture, livestock, pottery, and dramatically different genetics. Ancient DNA studies show these farmers largely replaced much of Britain's earlier hunter-gatherer population, and they transformed the islands completely. Massive stone monuments appeared during this era. Places like Stonehenge emerged from these farming societies, along with burial chambers and ritual landscapes spread across Britain and Ireland. But here's what's important. The earlier hunter-gatherers didn't disappear entirely. Their ancestry survived through mixture, becoming part of Britain's growing layered population. Then came one of the biggest genetic transformations in British history. Around 400–500 years ago, Bronze Age migrants linked to the Yamnaya steppe herders entered Britain through continental Europe. These people carried substantial steppe ancestry and likely spread Indo-European languages across much of Europe. And ancient DNA revealed something extraordinary. A major 2018 Nature study led by researchers from Harvard Medical School and the Francis Crick Institute found that these Bronze Age migrants replaced an enormous percentage of Britain's earlier Neolithic population within just a few centuries. Some estimates suggest up to 90% of Britain's gene pool changed during this transition. That's incredible. The history books once focused heavily on Roman invasions or Anglo-Saxon settlements as Britain's defining transformations. But genetically, the largest turnover may have happened thousands of years earlier during the Bronze Age.